The difference is that my computers don't lie. My words hang in the air of Castle Key Bank's Crisis Management Center, 40 stories above Manhattan. Robert Morgan, the man who once sneered at my computer addiction, stands frozen, his designer suit suddenly seeming too tight as security approaches. His medical empire is crumbling before his eyes. And I, Grace Sullivan, am the one who brought it down. The board chairman's gavel strikes with finality. Meeting adjourned. Mr. Morgan, you'll be escorted from the premises. I gather my tablet, feeling 20 pairs of eyes on me, not judging this time, but filled with a new respect. Behind Robert, my cousin Beth's perfect composure finally cracks, mascara-tinged tears cutting through her designer makeup. You've destroyed everything, she whispers as they pass. Mom was right, you'll always be alone with your computers. I think of David waiting in my office, of Sarah's fierce loyalty, of Margaret's mentorship. For the first time in 15 years, I smiled genuinely at my cousin. I'm not alone, I tell her. I'm just not with people who tried to break me. As the door closes behind them, I release a breath I've been holding for what feels like most of my 45 years. My phone buzzes, a message from my father after 5 years of silence. We need to talk. How did I get here? How did the family disappointment become the woman who brought down a medical fraud empire? The answer lies 15 years in the past, with a mother's death, a broken promise, and an inheritance stolen by those who claimed to love me most. Flashback at the memorial service. My mother's funeral was a sea of black designer dresses and polite murmurs. I sat apart, my laptop open, not from disrespect, but because coding was the only thing keeping me from drowning in grief. Catherine Sullivan had been my champion, my compass, the only one who understood my passion for technology. Still with those computers? My Aunt Elaine's voice cut through my concentration. She stood over me, pearls gleaming against her black dress, disapproval radiating from every perfect pore. It's not appropriate, Grace. Your mother wouldn't have wanted this. But that was a lie. Mom had wanted exactly this, for me to continue building, creating, following my dreams. The trust fund she'd left was supposed to ensure I could pursue the doctorate in computer science I'd been accepted for at MIT. The Catherine Cooper Foundation for Women in Technology had been her dream, and now it was mine. I closed my laptop. I'm working on something important, Aunt Elaine. The only important thing now is family. Her hand rested on my shoulder, manicured nails digging slightly into my skin. We need to discuss the arrangements, the estate. Your father is overwhelmed. I glanced across the room at Dad, Thomas Sullivan, once a powerful investment banker, now a hollow-eyed shell leaning heavily on Elaine's every word since Mom's diagnosis. They stood too close for a brother and sister-in-law fresh from a funeral. Something cold settled in my stomach. What arrangements? I asked. Your mother had. Unrealistic ideas. Elaine's smile didn't reach her eyes. But I promised her I'd take care of everything. Behind her, my cousin Beth approached, her husband Robert in tow. Perfect Beth with her perfect life, her doctor husband, her picture book future. She hugged me, her expensive perfume nearly choking me. Oh, Grace, she sighed. Mom says you can stay with us until you get back on your feet. This tech hobby of yours. Well, it was fine when you were younger, but maybe it's time for something more realistic. I pulled away. It's not a hobby. I'm developing an AI security system that could revolutionize. Let me see what you're working on. Beth interrupted, her interest obviously fake. Maybe I can help. You don't know anything about coding, I replied, clutching my laptop closer. No, but I know someone who does. Her smile was practiced perfection. Remember Edward from college? He's doing amazing things in tech now. Edward Hayes. The name alone made my skin crawl. My former classmate who'd stolen my research project senior year, then claimed I was just jealous when he won the innovation prize. I'm fine, thanks. Later that night, as guests were leaving, I overheard Elaine speaking to my father in hushed tones in her study. Thomas, Catherine's ideas about Grace's future are impractical. A foundation for women coders? That trust fund would be wasted. Grace needs structure, real-world skills, not encouragement for this digital obsession. I froze outside the door, heart pounding. But Catherine wanted, my father began. Catherine isn't here anymore. Elaine cut in sharply. I am. And I promise to take care of this family. The trust will be better used securing Beth and Robert's medical practice. An actual business with actual returns, not some fantasy tech project. Grace will be devastated, Dad said, but his voice already carried resignation. She'll thank us someday, when she finally outgrows this phase. I backed away silently, rage and grief tangling in my chest. That night, I made two promises to myself. I would never abandon my mother's dream, and someday, I would make them all see exactly what they had tried to destroy. Present day Hawk Shield success. Earth to Grace. David Chen waves his hand in front of my face, bringing me back to the present. His smile is warm, concerned. My CTO has been by my side for a decade now, believing in me when no one else would. The board meeting starts in 10 minutes. You ready? Always ready, I respond, straightening my blazer. Gone are the hoodies and jeans from those early days. Today, I wear a tailored suit that speaks the language of these boardrooms. Not because I care about appearances, but because I've learned that presentation is currency in these circles. On my tablet, headlines scroll. Hawk Shield AI prevents billion-dollar cyber heist. 20 years of work, of sacrifice, of proving everyone wrong, and here we are. My little computer hobby now protects some of the largest financial institutions in the world. Margaret Winters, my mentor on the board, intercepts us in the hallway. At 65, she remains one of the most powerful women in banking, her silver hair a crown earned through decades of fighting in male-dominated boardrooms. Grace, her expression is tense. We need to talk before the meeting. There's been an emergency addition to the agenda. She pulls me into a side office. A bailout request came in last night. Morgan Medical Group. The name hits me like a physical blow. Robert Morgan? He's married to my cousin. Margaret's eyes narrow. I should recuse you from the vote. What exactly are they asking for? 15 million emergency capital injection. Their primary facility is underwater, and they're facing litigation risk. She pauses. The numbers don't add up, Grace, but there's pressure from above to push it through. My phone buzzes. David has sent the loan application documents. I scan them quickly, years of pattern recognition kicking in. These financials are doctored, I say. Look at the quarterly revenue jumps. Too perfect. Can you prove it? I pull up Hawk Shield's financial analysis module. Give me 5 minutes. As I work, memories float back. Beth and Robert at family gatherings, their matching tennis outfits and country club tans, always with a pitying glance my way. Still playing with computers, Grace? Robert would ask, while Beth showcased another diamond on her finger. When are you going to get a real job? Year after year, holiday after holiday, while I built my company from nothing, after Elaine had redirected my trust fund to more practical investments, they flaunted their success, never knowing I could see the cracks forming in their perfect facade. The system pings. I've found it. Offshore accounts, I mutter. Casino charges in Macau. And look at this, equipment purchases that don't match patient records. Margaret leans closer. Money laundering? And worse. I stand. Let's go. The confrontation, Robert doesn't recognize me when he walks into the boardroom. It's been 2 years since I last saw him at a family function, and he's aged. His face is puffy, his designer suit slightly ill-fitting. Behind him, Beth enters, her Chanel suit and perfect makeup a shield against reality. Mr. Morgan, the chairman begins. Please present your case. Robert launches into a polished speech about market pressures and temporary setbacks. I let him talk while Hawk Shield analyzes his company's entire digital footprint. Just need bridge financing to weather this storm, he concludes confidently. Morgan Medical Group has an impeccable reputation. My tablet pings. I look up. Is that why you've been transferring funds to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands? Robert freezes mid-sentence. Now he recognizes me. I don't know what you're talking about. 7 transfers in the last month, all just under reporting thresholds. I turn my tablet around, displaying the transaction records. And these casino charges in Macau, are they part of your medical research? This is absurd, Robert sputters. You can't access private banking records. They're not private when they're tied to loan applications, I say calmly, and they're not private when they trigger our fraud detection algorithms. Beth stands suddenly. This is a personal vendetta. Grace has always been jealous of our success. I laugh, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Jealous? Of what? Your husband's gambling debts? Or the malpractice suits you're trying to settle quietly? The room erupts in whispers. Robert lunges forward, but security is already moving. You, he hisses. Beth was right about you. Always hiding behind your computers, thinking you're better than everyone. The difference, I cut him off, is that my computers don't lie. Flashback the discovery 10 years after my mother's death. I was still rebuilding. Hawkshield was small but growing, earning a reputation for innovative security solutions. I'd long since stopped attending family gatherings, tired of the sidelong glances and whispered commentaries on my failed potential. But that changed when Sarah Rodriguez, my brilliant young systems analyst, burst into my office one morning. Boss, you need to see this. Her usual cheerful demeanor was replaced with concern. Someone's been probing our old code base. In the Security Operations Center, screens displayed real-time threat analytics. Sarah pulled up a log file that made my blood run cold. Sullivan Morgan. Access attempt. Legacy System V1. 0. Origin. Dormant script detected. Status. Historical. Timestamp. 10 years prior. That's impossible, I murmured, leaning closer. That system was offline before we even incorporated. David appeared behind us, coffee in hand. Impossible? Just deliberate. He pointed to the timestamp. This was planted during your beta testing phase. Ring any bells? The memory hit me like a thunderbolt, Beth hovering over my shoulder at my mother's memorial service, feigning interest in my work. Maybe I can help you, she said. Pull up everything we have on Edward Hayes, I told Sarah. The screens filled with data, corporate filings, news articles, social media. There he was, CEO of Rival Tech Solutions, a direct competitor, and listed as a business partner in Morgan Medical Group's latest venture. Well, David whistled. Looks like your cousin's been playing both sides. My phone rang. Margaret Winters. Turn on the financial news, she said without preamble. The headline scrolled across CNBC. Rival Tech Solutions announces breakthrough in medical AI security, partners with Morgan Medical Group. They're using our code, Sarah said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The dormant script. It was a backdoor. They'd been stealing our research for years. I should have felt angry, but instead, a cold clarity washed over me. Get me everything on the trust fund transfers from 10 years ago. Grace, David warned. Some doors are better left closed. Not this one. Hours later, we had our answer. The paper trail was buried deep, but AI doesn't miss patterns. The family trust, meant to be split between Beth and me after my mother's death, had been systematically drained, first through legal transfers orchestrated by Aunt Elaine, then through a series of investments in shell companies. One of those companies, Rival Tech Solutions. It all made sense now. The sudden success of Edward's company. The rapid expansion of Robert's medical practice. The silent collusion of my father, who never questioned where the money went. They hadn't just dismissed my dreams. They'd stolen them, used my inheritance to fund competitors, and thought I'd never be smart enough to discover the truth. Present day, the final confrontation. After the boardroom confrontation, I returned to my office to find Elaine waiting. She's aged since I last saw her, but her pearls are still perfect, her posture still rigid with superiority. David stands nearby, arms crossed, watching her like a hawk. You can go, David, I say. You sure? He doesn't take his eyes off Elaine, I'm sure. I sit behind my desk. My aunt was just leaving anyway. Grace, Elaine's voice trembles slightly. We need to fix this. The scandal. It's destroying everything. Everything you built on lies, you mean? I pull up the trust fund documents on my monitor. Want to explain these transfers? You were young, reckless. We were protecting the family legacy. By stealing from me? By funding Robert's gambling and Edward's corporate theft? She flinches. It wasn't like that. We had plans. My phone buzzes. Sarah. Boss, we found something big. Coming up now. The door opens. Sarah rushes in, tablet in hand. Sorry to interrupt, but look at this. She places the tablet on my desk. Email records fill the screen. Urgent messages to offshore accounts, transfer requests, desperate attempts to move money, all from this morning. Trying to hide the rest of my trust fund? I ask Elaine. We're just covering Robert's tracks? You don't understand, Elaine's composure cracks. Robert. He promised the investments would pay off. The medical practice was supposed to be our security. Security? I laugh. It was a front. Robert was laundering money through fake equipment purchases. Beth helped Edward steal my technology, and you funded all of it. I had to protect Beth. Elaine stands, her voice rising. She was going to have a real life, a normal life, unlike you. I stay seated calm. The weird niece who embarrassed you with her computers. You were just like your mother, Elaine spits. Always thinking you were better than us, with your big dreams and your fancy education. The words hit like a slap. My mother believed in me. She left that trust fund so I could chase those dreams. Your mother was a fool. Elaine's mask finally shatters. She filled your head with nonsense about changing the world when you should have been learning to fit in. David steps forward, but I hold up a hand to stop him. Fit in? Like this? I pull up another document. Your email to the family lawyer the day after Mom died, planning how to redirect my inheritance. Elaine goes pale. Where did you get that? I'm good with computers, remember? Mom's estate documents, the trust fund transfers, your secret meetings with my father. It's all here. I press a button. And now it's all with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. You wouldn't, she whispers. We're family. Family? I stand slowly. Family doesn't steal from orphan nieces. Family doesn't conspire to destroy someone's life's work. Family doesn't betray a dying sister's wishes. My phone buzzes again. A news alert. FBI raids rival tech offices, CEO Edward Hayes in custody. I show Elaine the headline. Looks like your investment isn't paying off after all. Personal memory, mother's guidance. That night, alone in my apartment, I find myself looking at old photographs. My mother and me at my first science fair, both of us beaming beside my computer project. I was 12, already in love with code, already seeing patterns where others saw only chaos. You have a gift, Grace, she told me that night. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt it. Catherine Sullivan had been a pioneer herself, one of the first female computer scientists at her university in the 1980s, fighting for recognition in a field that barely acknowledged women existed. She understood the resistance I would face, not just from the world, but from our own family. Your aunt never understood my choices, she confided once, during her final months. She thinks success is measured in dinner parties and charity committees. But you and I know better. I trace her face in the photograph, remembering her strength, her determination. The cancer took her body, but it never touched her spirit. Promise me you'll finish what we started, she'd whispered in the hospital. The foundation, the scholarships. Girls who think like you do need champions. I promised. And then I watched as Elaine dismantled everything my mother had built, redirecting the trust fund, convincing my father it was for my own good. For 15 years, I'd fought back the only way I knew how, building Hog Shield from nothing, proving my mother's faith in me wasn't misplaced. And now, finally, I had the means to fulfill that promise properly. Meeting with father, I choose a public place to meet my father, the crowded cafe in the lobby of my office building. 5 years of silence, and now he wants to talk? Fine, but on my terms. He's already there when I arrive, looking older than I remember. His banker's suit hangs loose on his frame, his hair more gray than brown. Grace. He stands as I approach. You look successful. I sit without hugging him. Amazing what following your dreams can do. The waiter appears. I order an espresso. Thomas gets water. Elaine called me, he says after an uncomfortable silence. She's hysterical. Something about rival tech stocks crashing? Funny how she runs to you when her schemes fall apart. I pull out my tablet. Want to see what else she's been running to you about? I slide the device across the table. Photos fill the screen. Thomas and Elaine at her beach house in the Hamptons, dated 2 weeks after my mother's funeral. More photos, more dates, all during the time the trust was being drained. You knew, I say quietly. You knew what she was doing with my inheritance. He won't meet my eyes. It's complicated, Grace. Elaine. She had a plan for all of us. A plan? I laughed bitterly. Was the plan to fund Beth's husband's fake medical empire? Or to invest my money in a company trying to steal my work? You don't understand. No, you don't understand. I lean forward. I found the emails, Dad. You and Elaine discussing how to protect the family legacy from my risky tech ventures. You chose her side every time. A notification pops up on my phone. David, Edward Hayes just called a press conference. Turning it on now. The cafe's TV screen switches to the news. There's Edward, looking polished in his CO suit, Beth standing supportively behind him. Recent system failures at rival tech solutions were the result of a targeted attack, he's saying. We have evidence linking this corporate sabotage to Hawkshield AI and its founder. Targeted attack? I scoff. They tried to hack us using code they stole years ago. The system defended itself. Thomas watches the screens, his face pale. Is this true? What's true is that your precious niece helped plant malicious code in my first prototype. What's true is that you all thought I was wasting my life while you invested my inheritance in the very people trying to destroy me. My phone buzzes again. Sarah. Boss, you need to see this. Found something in Elaine's email archives. I opened the attachment. It's an old email chain between Elaine and my mother, dated just before her death. Promise me you'll support Grace's dreams, my mother had written. The trust is for her future, whatever future she chooses. Elaine's response. Of course, sister. I'll make sure the money goes exactly where it needs to go. My hands shake. She promised Mom, and you let her break that promise. Elaine said it was for your own good, Thomas whispers, that you needed to learn real-world values. Real-world values? I stand up, my chair scraping loudly. Like loyalty? Like keeping your word? Like standing up for your own daughter? The cafe has gone quiet. On the TV, Edward is still talking, but now the ticker below shows rival tech's stock price in freefall. I built something real, I say, my voice steady despite the anger burning in my chest. Something that matters. While you and Elaine were playing family politics, I was creating systems that protect people's lives and livelihoods. Grace, please. I gather my things. You don't get to plead now. Not after years of silence. Not after choosing Elaine's lies over your own daughter's truth. As I walk away, I hear him call after me. I'm sorry. Too little, too late. The time for apologies has passed. Now is the time for consequences. Discovery and resolution. 2 weeks after the confrontation with my family, a familiar voice makes me turn as I stand at my mother's grave. The cemetery groundskeeper approaches, holding an envelope. Ms. Sullivan? Your father left this for you this morning. Said it was important. Inside is a key and an address. Below it, my father's handwriting. Your mother's storage unit. It's time you had what's yours. I showed David the note. Feel like a detour? The storage facility is small, family-owned. Unit 23 looks like any other, but my hands tremble as I turn the key. The door rolls up to reveal boxes, dozens of them, carefully labeled in my mother's neat handwriting. Grace's Code Projects, age 12. Science Fair Awards. MIT acceptance. She kept everything, I whisper. David picks up a dusty laptop. This looks ancient. That's where I wrote my first program. I take it from him, memories flooding back. Mom bought it for me when Elaine said computers weren't for girls. There's more. David points to a filing cabinet. Inside are documents, The original trust paperwork, letters, photos, and a sealed envelope with my name on it, dated just before she died. Dear Grace, I read aloud, my voice catching. If you're reading this, then I was right about Elaine. I've kept copies of everything. The real trust documents, the account numbers, proof of what they're planning. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. You were always meant to build something extraordinary. Love, Mom. She knew, David says softly. She protected you the only way she could, by leaving a paper trail. I laughed through tears. Like mother, like daughter. My phone rings. Margaret, turn on the news now. David pulls it up on his phone. The headline makes my breath catch. FBI announces major break in corporate fraud case. Whistleblower Thomas Sullivan provides key evidence. Your father's been working with them for months, Margaret explains, ever since you confronted him. He gave them everything. Elaine's schemes, Robert's fraud, all of it. I sit heavily on a storage box. He chose a side. The right one, finally. Another box catches my eye. Grace's first server setup. Inside is my original coding notebook, filled with teenage dreams and diagrams. I want to show you something, I tell David, pulling out my phone and calling Sarah. Remember that scholarship idea? Let's make it bigger. How much bigger? I can hear her typing. Convert the old server room into a coding academy. Free classes for girls who want to learn tech. Use Mom's storage unit as a museum. Show them where it all started. Already on it, Sarah replies. First class starts next week. David touches my arm. There's something else you should see. He leads me to his car and drives to my office building. The lobby has changed. A new sign hangs above the entrance. Catherine Sullivan Center for Technology Innovation. The board approved it this morning, he explains, along with funding for a full STEM scholarship program. I stare at my mother's name in gleaming letters. It's perfect. There's one more thing. David turns to face me. I've been waiting for the right moment. Yes, I say before he can finish. He blinks. You don't even know what I was going to say. You were going to suggest dinner. Not to celebrate the company or the victory or even the academy, I smile. Just dinner, just us. Actually, he pulls out a small box. I was going to suggest forever. My phone buzzes one final time. A message from my father. Your mother would be so proud. Not just of what you built, but of who you became. I am too. I look at David, at the ring, at my mother's name shining above us. This isn't the family ending Elaine and Beth had planned for me. This is better. Forever sounds good, I say, taking the ring. But first, I have a coding class to teach. David laughs. Of course you do. The autumn wind has calmed. Above us, my mother's name catches the setting sun, casting long shadows that look almost like lines of code. Some people are born to fit in, others are born to stand out, and some of us were born to build something entirely new. That's not revenge. That's not even success. That's justice. If I had known the truth from the beginning, I would have let her fall. The words hung in the air of my empty kitchen as I stared at the flash drive in my hand, evidence of the most elaborate deception I'd ever witnessed. Not from a patient, but from my own mother. My name is Allison Carter. I'm 52 years old, and for the past 5 years, I've been a full-time caregiver to my mother, Eleanor Carter, a 78-year-old retired high school English teacher who supposedly can't walk, can't bathe herself, can't even make it to the bathroom without assistance. Or so she led everyone to believe. Tomorrow is her birthday celebration. My sisters are flying in. A slideshow is prepared, but not the one they're expecting. After 5 years of carrying the weight of another person's life while putting mine on hold, I've discovered the truth, and I can't bear the weight of it any longer. 5 days earlier, the inconsistencies began with medication. As a nurse for over 20 years, 15 of those in palliative care, I could recognize patterns that others might miss. Mother's pain medication was disappearing at an irregular rate, too slow some weeks, too fast others. It didn't match her reported pain levels. Eleanor, I called from the medication cabinet, using her first name as I always did when something felt off. It was a habit from my nursing days, creating professional distance when needed. Your tramadol count is off again. Is it? Her voice floated from the living room. Practice fragility in every syllable. I must have dropped some. You know how my hands shake. I walked into the living room, pill organizer in hand. She was propped up in a recliner, blankets arranged artfully around her legs, television remote within reach, and a novel open on her lap. Her hair was perfectly styled, something she claimed she couldn't do herself anymore. Your hands weren't shaking when you adjusted your hair this morning, I said, keeping my voice neutral, clinical. She looked up, those blue eyes wide with practiced innocence. Samantha came by while you were getting groceries. She helped me. Samantha, my older sister, hadn't been to the house in 3 months. She lived 4 hours away and ran a successful marketing firm. She sent money regularly and called weekly, but visits were rare. I nodded, swallowing the contradiction. I see. Flashback 3 years ago, I remember the day I decided to move in with Mother. Rebecca, my other sister, had called in a panic. She fell again, Allie. The doctor says she can't live alone anymore. I was sitting in the hospital break room, halfway through a 12-hour shift in the oncology ward. I just finished helping a 45-year-old woman say goodbye to her children. What about assisted living? I asked, knowing the answer before Rebecca gave it. She refuses. Says she'll die first. Rebecca's voice lowered. And you know how she gets when she's cornered. I did know. Mother had always been dramatic, fiercely independent until she needed something, and then suddenly helpless. After Dad died 10 years ago, those tendencies amplified. What about you or Samantha? I asked, though I knew the answer to this too. Sam's in the middle of her company expansion, and I've got the kids' college applications and Tom's mother moving in with us. She trailed off, the guilt evident even through the phone. You're the nurse, Allie. You know what to do for her. And she hesitated. Single? Divorced? Childless? Which one makes me the obvious choice, Becca? The bitterness surprised even me. I was going to say the strongest of us, she said quietly. 2 weeks later, I took a leave of absence from the hospital. That leave became a resignation when it became clear Mother would require long-term care. At 47, I packed up my apartment and moved back into my childhood home, converting the dining room into my bedroom to be closer to her. I told myself it would be temporary. Just until she regained strength. Just until we found a better solution. 5 years later, I was still there. Present day, the first concrete evidence came in the form of a receipt that fell from her coat pocket, a coat she supposedly never wore anymore because it was too heavy for her frail shoulders. The receipt was from Dandy's dance studio, dated 3 weeks earlier, for a senior ballroom dancing class. I stared at it for a long time, my nursing brain immediately connecting dots. The days she claimed her arthritis was too painful to get out of bed were the same days this dance class was held. The mornings she couldn't lift her arms high enough to wash her hair were followed by evenings when I'd noticed her hair looked freshly styled. I should have confronted her immediately. Instead, I did what years of critical care nursing had taught me. I observed, documented, and gathered evidence before making a diagnosis. I checked her closet while she napped. Behind her sick clothes, the oversized cardigans and fleece pajama sets she wore when anyone was watching, I found active wear, dance shoes, and a gym bag. Inside the bag was a membership card to Silver Sneakers Fitness Center, a program for seniors I'd actually suggested to her 2 years earlier. She'd refused, saying her body couldn't handle that kind of stress. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, arranging the evidence like patient charts, receipts from calves on days she claimed she couldn't swallow solid food, a half-punched loyalty card from a smoothie shop near the dance studio, and a community center newsletter with her name listed as a new member of the Active Agers Social Club. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca, arriving Thursday night for Mom's birthday weekend. Samantha's planning a big surprise. Can you make sure Mom's up for it? I stared at the message, my stomach churning with a mixture of anger and grief. They didn't know. They saw Mother only during her performances of fragility. They didn't witness the daily manipulation, the guilt trips, the whispered, I just don't want to die alone comments that kept me tethered to this house year after year. I texted back, she'll be ready. I'm preparing a special slideshow. Flashback 20 years ago. You have such steady hands, my patient had said as I inserted her four. Such a gift for a nurse. I smiled, securing the line. My mother was a teacher. She always said patience was more important than steadiness. She sounds wise, the elderly woman replied. You must be close. I hesitated. We have an understanding. The truth was more complicated. Mother and I had always maintained a careful distance. She preferred my sisters, the academic and the beauty. I was the practical one, the one who fixed things, solved problems, and never quite measured up to her expectations. Will she be proud when you finish your master's degree? The patient asked. I don't know, I answered honestly. She doesn't really understand why I need another degree at my age. I was 32 then, divorced for 3 years, rebuilding my life and advancing my career. Mother had called my return to school a waste of good years when you should be finding another husband. I never did finish that degree. Life intervened, first with more responsibilities at the hospital, then with mother's declining health, or what I thought was declining health. Present day, the flash drive was my breaking point. I found it hidden inside a ballet slipper in a showbox at the back of her closet, labeled My Real Life. The contents were stunning. Dozens of videos, all taken within the last year. Mother dancing, not just swaying gently but full ballroom spins and dips. Mother at a yoga class, doing poses I couldn't manage with my stiff knees. Mother laughing with friends at a restaurant, lifting a wine glass and toast. Mother walking a neighbor's dog, gardening, shopping. All on days when she had told me she couldn't get out of bed, couldn't feed herself, couldn't bear the pain of existence without my constant attention. The final video made my blood run cold. Mother was sitting with another woman, someone I didn't recognize, at what looked like a calf. Doesn't Allison suspect anything? The woman asked. Mother laughed, a sound I rarely heard at home. Allie sees what she expects to see. She's so used to taking care of people, she doesn't question it anymore. Besides, what would she do if she didn't have me to worry about? She has no life of her own. But aren't you worried she'll find out? Make other plans? Mother's face hardened, an expression I recognized from my childhood whenever I disappointed her. That's why I'm meeting with Judith tomorrow. Changing the will. Just in case Allie decides she's had enough. She needs to understand there are consequences to abandoning family. I shut the laptop, my hands shaking not with fear, but with rage. 5 years of my life. 5 years of declining professional opportunities, skipped conferences, ignored dating prospects. 5 years of changing sheets, administering medications, cooking special meals, all while she played the victim. And now she was planning to cut me out of her will because she feared I might discover her deception and leave. I picked up my phone and called the one person who might understand. Michael? It's Allison. I need to talk. Michael's apartment, Michael Green's apartment, was exactly what you'd expect from a retired physician. Meticulously organized medical journals on bookshelves, comfortable but practical furniture, and a view of the park where he jogged every morning. We'd been colleagues at Memorial Hospital before he retired early to care for his father. Show me again, he said, his voice calm as we reviewed the videos for the third time. I watched his face as he studied the timestamps, the locations, the activities. His medical mind was doing what mine had already done, assessing the evidence and forming a diagnosis. Well, I asked when he finally looked up. It's not dementia, he said, answering my unspoken fear. This is too organized, too consistent. This is. He hesitated. Manipulation, I finished for him. Psychological abuse. He nodded slowly. What are you going to do? I stared out his window at the park. A group of seniors was doing tai chi on the lawn, moving with purpose and dignity. I thought of all the patients I'd cared for over the years, people who truly needed help, who fought to maintain independence despite genuine limitations. Her birthday party is this weekend, I said. Samantha and Rebecca will both be there. So will Judith Watson, her lawyer. And I turned to face him. I'm going to show them the truth. Michael studied me, concern etched on his face. We'd known each other for 15 years, had dated briefly before his wife's cancer diagnosis. He knew me well enough to read between the lines. You're sure? Once you do this, your relationship with your mother will never be the same. I laughed, a brittle sound even to my own ears. What relationship, Michael? The one where I surrender my life to care for someone who's been lying to me for years? The one where she threatens to disinherit me if I try to reclaim any independence? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled out a notebook and pen, a habit from his practicing days. Let's think this through, he said. What's your desired outcome? It was such a physician question that I almost smiled. Freedom, I said simply. I want my life back. I want my sisters to know the truth. I want to stop feeling crazy for questioning things that don't add up. He nodded, making notes. And after? Have you thought about what comes next? I hadn't, not really. The future beyond the revelation was a blank page. I don't know, I admitted. Find a job, I guess. Get my own place. Start over at 52. You could return to nursing, he suggested. After a 5-year gap? Who would hire me? The hospice center where I volunteer is desperately short-staffed. Your experience in palliative care would be invaluable. He looked up from his notes. Just something to consider for the after. I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the prospect of an after. For 5 years, there had only been the endless present of caretaking. One more question, Michael said, his voice gentler now. Is this about justice or revenge? I considered this carefully. Both, I finally answered. Is that wrong? He shook his head. It's human. Just remember, when you burn down the house, you don't get to sleep in it afterward. The day before the party, the slideshow was complete. I'd spent hours integrating the family photos my sisters had sent with clips from Mother's secret videos. The juxtaposition was jarring. Mother in a wheelchair looking frail and vulnerable in one image, then Mother dancing vigorously in the next, both with the same date stamp. I saved the final version to a flash drive and made copies. One I kept in my pocket, one I gave to Michael for safekeeping, and one I hid in the freezer behind the ice trays, a nurse's habit of always having backups. When I returned home, Mother was sitting in her wheelchair in the living room, a blanket across her lap despite the warm spring day. Where have you been? She asked, her voice that perfect mix of fragility and accusation that had controlled me for years. I needed my medication an hour ago. I checked my watch. It's not due for another 2 hours, Eleanor. A flash of something annoyance? Fear crossed her face before she rearranged her features into a pained expression. The pain is worse today. I can feel a flare coming on. In the past, I would have immediately checked her temperature, adjusted her medication schedule, perhaps called her doctor. Today, I simply nodded. I'll get you some water, I said, walking to the kitchen. By the way, Judith called. She'll be at the party tomorrow. I watched her reflection in the microwave door as I filled a glass with water. Her face changed, calculating. Oh, that's nice of her, Mother said carefully. Did she mention anything about our appointment last week? I turned, handing her the water. No, should she have? Mother took a small sip, her eyes never leaving my face. No, just some minor adjustments to the will. Nothing important. I see. I sat down across from her. You know, I've been thinking about the future lately. Have you? Her voice was cautious. Yes. I'm not getting any younger. I wonder sometimes what I'll do when. I let the sentence hang unfinished. When I'm gone. She supplied, her eyes suddenly damp. She reached for my hand. Oh, Allie, you don't need to worry about that. I've made sure you'll be taken care of. This house will be yours. The lies came so easily to her. According to the conversation I'd witnessed on video, she was planning to cut me out completely. That's very generous, I said, withdrawing my hand. But I was actually thinking about what I might do before that. It's been 5 years since I practiced nursing. I miss it sometimes. Her face hardened almost imperceptibly. But who would take care of me? You know how difficult it is for me to adjust to new people. It was just a thought, I said, standing up. I should start dinner. Samantha and Rebecca will be here tomorrow morning to help set up for the party. As I walked to the kitchen, I heard her call after me. Allie, you've always been my rock. I don't know what I'd do without you. I stopped, not turning around. You'd manage, I said, echoing words I'd spoken countless times before, but this time knowing exactly how true they were. The birthday break, the community center looked festive with balloon bouquets and floral arrangements, all organized by Samantha, who approached party planning with the same efficiency she brought to her marketing campaigns. Rebecca had handled the catering, ensuring Mother's dietary restrictions were accommodated. Mother arrived in her wheelchair, pushed by me, wearing a new dress Samantha had bought for the occasion. She looked appropriately frail and grateful as guests, mostly former colleagues and a few relatives, greeted her with gentle hugs and sympathetic smiles. You look wonderful, Eleanor, her friend Martha said. Allison must be taking excellent care of you. Mother patted my hand resting on the wheelchair handle. I don't know what I'd do without her. She's given up so much for me. I smiled tightly, feeling Michael's eyes on me from across the room. He'd arrived early to help set up the audiovisual equipment for the slideshow. He nodded slightly, a silent question. Are you sure? I nodded back. There was no turning back now. Samantha clinked a glass, calling for attention. Thank you all for coming to celebrate Mom's 78th birthday. As many of you know, the last few years haven't been easy for her health-wise, but she's faced every challenge with courage and grace. Rebecca joined her at the front. We've prepared a special slideshow to celebrate Mom's journey. Allison, who has been Mom's dedicated caregiver for the past 5 years, put this together for us. All eyes turned to me as I stood. Before we start, I'd like to say something. My voice was steadier than I expected. For 5 years, I've watched my mother struggle with her health. As a nurse, I've done everything I could to support her. Mother was looking at me with growing wariness. But recently, I've made some discoveries that have changed my understanding of the situation. I nodded to Michael, who pressed play on the laptop. The screen lit up with a family photo from Christmas 2 years ago, Mother in her wheelchair, looking frail, with the 3 of us daughters surrounding her. Then it cut to a video dated the same day, after my sisters had left and I'd gone to pick up prescriptions. Mother standing in the kitchen, preparing herself a sandwich, moving easily. A murmur went through the room. Samantha's mouth fell open. Rebecca gripped the back of a chair. The slideshow continued, contrasting images of Mother's supposed incapacity with evidence of her active, independent life. The most damning was the split screen showing Mother teaching her last class before retirement, lecturing about the importance of truth and integrity, alongside footage of her telling a friend how she manipulated me into staying. When the screen finally went dark, the silence in the room was absolute. Mother's face had gone pale, her hands clutching the arms of her wheelchair. I don't understand, she said, her voice a perfect tremolo of confusion. Where did those videos come from? They must be old, from before I got sick. The timestamps say otherwise, I replied calmly. It must be some kind of therapy program, she said, looking around desperately. My doctor suggested movement therapy, visualization. Which doctor? I asked. Dr. Harrison? Because I spoke with her yesterday. She hasn't seen you in person for over a year. You've been canceling appointments and requesting prescription refills by phone. Judith Watson, who had been standing near the door, stepped forward. Eleanor, don't say anything more. But it was too late. The damage was done. Rebecca approached Mother slowly. You've been lying? All this time? The wheelchair, the medications, the constant care? You don't understand, Mother said, her voice hardening. After your father died, you all left. Samantha with her career, you with your family. Only Allison stayed. Because you told us you were dying. Samantha shouted, her composure cracking. You told us you needed full-time care. I needed someone to stay. Mother shot back, suddenly standing from the wheelchair, proving my point more effectively than any video. I was alone. The collective gasp in the room was audible. You could have asked, I said quietly. You could have said you were lonely, that you needed company. Instead, You stole 5 years of my life through deception. Mother turned to me, her expression changing to one I recognized from childhood, the martyr's mask. I gave you purpose. What else were you doing with your life? Divorced, childless, just going through the motions at that hospital. The cruelty of her words hung in the air. Even those who might have sympathized with her loneliness shifted uncomfortably. Rebecca stepped between us. That's enough, Mother. She turned to me. Allie, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Samantha was staring at the wheelchair, then at Mother, standing perfectly steady without it. All those times I sent money for medical expenses, for treatments. I'll pay you back, Mother said quickly. That's not the point. Samantha rarely raised her voice, but now it echoed through the community center. You manipulated us all. You made me feel guilty for not visiting more often when you were perfectly capable of traveling to see me. Judith approached Mother. Eleanor, we need to talk. Privately. I watched as Judith led Mother away, noticing how easily Mother walked now that the pretense had fallen away. The guests began to disperse, murmuring among themselves. Michael appeared at my side. You okay? I nodded, feeling strangely empty. I thought I'd feel more. Something. Vindicated, maybe. But I just feel tired. Rebecca and Samantha approached, both looking shell-shocked. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Rebecca asked. Would you have believed me? I counted. Without the evidence? They exchanged glances, answering my question with their silence. What happens now? Samantha asked. I looked toward the door where Mother had exited with Judith. I don't know. But I know what I'm doing. I'm going home to pack my things. I can't stay there anymore. Where will you go? Rebecca asked. She can stay with me, Michael said, surprising me. I have a spare room. Until she figures out her next steps. Samantha nodded slowly. And Mother? She's clearly capable of caring for herself, I said. Or she can hire someone with all the money she saved for dance lessons and yoga classes. As we talked, the door opened and Judith returned, alone. Where's my mother? I asked. She left, Judith said, looking uncomfortable. She asked me to tell you she's going to stay with a friend for a few days. And you? Rebecca asked. Did you know about all this? Judith's professional composure cracked slightly. I had suspicions. But client confidentiality prevented me from... Save it, Samantha interrupted. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. As the three of us walked out together, I felt a weight lifting, not completely gone, but lighter than it had been in years. Epilogue is 6 months later. The hospice center's garden was in full bloom, roses climbing trellises and lavender scenting the air. I adjusted Mrs. Patel's blanket as she dozed in the sunshine. Your daughter's coming at 3, I reminded her gently when she opened her eyes. She's bringing those samosas you like. Mrs. Patel smiled. You're a good nurse, Allison. You understand what we need at the end. I patted her hand. Rest now. I'll be back to help you inside before she arrives. As I walked back toward the building, I saw Michael waiting by the entrance, 2 coffee cups in hand. Busy day? He asked, handing me one. The usual, I replied. 2 new admissions, 1 discharge to home care. We sat on a bench overlooking the garden. In the 6 months since the revelation, my life had transformed. After staying with Michael for a few weeks, I'd found my own small apartment nearby. The hospice center had hired me part-time initially, then offered a full position when they saw my experience. Mother had eventually moved to Arizona, near an old college friend. She sent occasional emails, mostly surface-level updates without apology or acknowledgement of the past. I responded politely but briefly. Samantha and Rebecca had become more present in my life, our shared experience having forged a stronger bond. We spoke weekly now, and they both visited my new place. Heard from Eleanor? Michael asked, using Mother's first name as I'd asked everyone to do. Christmas card last week, I said. She's joined a theater group. He nodded. And how does that make you feel? I considered the question. Neutral. I hope she's happy, but it's not my responsibility anymore. And you? Are you happy? I looked around at the hospice center's peaceful grounds, at my sensible shoes and nurse's watch, at the man sitting beside me who had become more than a colleague, more than a friend. I'm content, I said truthfully. For the first time in years, I'm living my own life. Good, he said, taking my hand. That's all anyone can ask for at our age, isn't it? To live authentically on our own terms. It took me 52 years to figure that out, I said with a small laugh. Better late than never, he replied, squeezing my hand. As we sat there, I thought about what one of my patients had told me last week. The second half of life is when we finally become who we really are. At 52, I was finally discovering who that might be. $2 million plus interest. The words hung in the air of the sterile mediation room like a verdict. I watched my father's face drain of color as he read the settlement papers, his hands, once so steady when signing my education funds away to my brother, now trembling. At 42, I found myself facing the family who had tried to erase me 2 decades ago. My mother, Marion, her perfect chignon and designer outfit a stark contrast to the desperation in her eyes. My father, Richard, the retired corporate attorney whose rigid beliefs had shaped our family like prison bars. My brother Michael, no longer the golden child, slumped in the corner, his phone silent, no investors left to call. The mediator cleared his throat. Miss Eleanor Reed, your terms are full repayment of the misappropriated inheritance with interest, a public apology, and a binding no-contact agreement unless initiated by you. I nodded, feeling strangely calm. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about boundaries. My mother's lawyer leaned forward. The financial restitution is acceptable, but the public apology is simply non-negotiable, I finished for him. Just like the restraining order I'll file if they refuse. I caught Michael's eye across the room. For the briefest moment, something passed between us, recognition, perhaps. We were both casualties of our parent unyielding expectations, just in different ways. How had we come to this? 24 years of family history reduced to legal documents and calculated damages. It hadn't started with the phone call about Michael's wedding. No, it had begun long before that, with a young girl whose art was deemed worthless and whose inheritance disappeared. With parents who could only love the version of me they had imagined, not the person I actually was. We'll settle, my father's lawyer finally said, breaking the silence. And just like that, the war that had been brewing for decades was ending, not with the spectacular explosion I had once dreamed of, but with signatures on paper and the quiet acknowledgement of harm done. I wondered if they knew that this settlement wasn't my victory. It was my freedom. Flashback, the Sunday morning call. 6 weeks earlier, Sunday morning had spread across my Victorian home like honey, slow, sweet, anticipated. I'd restored the 19th century house myself, breathing life back into weathered wood and forgotten corners. The wraparound porch was my sanctuary, especially on mornings like this, with coffee steaming in my favorite pottery mug and autumn light filtering through the trees. I'd been settling into my porch swing, sketchbook in hand, when my phone rang. Eleanor, darling. My mother's voice, artificially bright. I recognized that tone immediately. It was the one she used when she wanted something. 5 years of carefully maintained distance had taught me to recognize the warning signs. We weren't completely estranged, occasional holiday cards, brief, superficial conversations every few months. A fragile peace built on unspoken boundaries. Mother, I responded, feeling the familiar tightening in my chest. What a surprise. Isn't it wonderful about Michael and Victoria? The engagement? I had heard, through Sarah, my bookstore owner friend who somehow always knew everyone's business. Yes, congratulations to them. Well, I'm calling with the most marvelous news, she continued, her voice rising with false enthusiasm. We've decided that your place would be perfect for the wedding. That lovely garden, the historical character, it's exactly what Victoria has been dreaming of. We're thinking September 15th. The vendors are already excited. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. My house. My sanctuary. The home I had built after they had made it clear I wasn't welcome in theirs. Mother, I said carefully, I don't recall offering my home as a wedding venue. Oh, don't be difficult, Eleanor, This is your brother's special day. Her voice dropped to that familiar manipulative whisper. After everything we've done for you. The phrase hit me like a physical blow. Everything they'd done for me. Like withdrawing my college funding when I chose design school over law. Like transferring my godmother's inheritance, nearly $200,000, to Michael's business ventures without my knowledge. Like telling me I was dead to them when I refused to marry David, the corporate lawyer they had selected. No, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. My answer is no. What do you mean, no? The invitations are already at the printers. Your father and I were just saying how perfect your property would be for her. I said no, mother. This is my home, not your event space. A shuffling sound, and then my father's gruff voice. Eleanor, you're embarrassing your mother. This wedding is happening at your place whether you like it or not. You wouldn't dare turn away 200 guests. The threat hung between us. They thought they still knew me, the people-pleasing daughter who'd rather die than cause a scene. The little girl who'd spend hours getting ready for country club dinners, only to be told my dress was wrong, my hair was wrong, my very existence somehow wrong. Actually, Dad, I said quietly, I would. Show up on my property uninvited, and I'll have you removed for trespassing. My mother grabbed the phone back. You ungrateful, fine. Ruin your brother's wedding. Add it to the list of ways you've disappointed this family. The call ended abruptly. I sat there, watching golden autumn leaves spiral down from the maple tree I'd planted 5 years ago, my first act of permanence in this house. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from recognition. Some patterns never change unless you break them yourself. Flashback the young artist. When I was 17, I won the state art competition with a portrait series that explored family expectations. My art teacher had cried when she saw it. The local newspaper ran a feature. A prestigious art school offered me a scholarship. My parents didn't attend the exhibition. No daughter of mine is wasting her life on paintings. My father had declared that night at dinner, his knife slicing through his steak with surgical precision. The Reed name stands for something in this community. My mother had nodded, her eyes never meeting mine. Think of your future, Eleanor. Art is a hobby, not a career. Meanwhile, Michael, 3 years my junior, had just received a new car for getting C's in his pre-law courses. The contrast wasn't lost on me, even then. 2 months before my 18th birthday, my godmother passed away. She had been my mother's college roommate, a free spirit who had traveled the world as a photojournalist. The life I might have had. My mother once whispered when she thought I couldn't hear. Aunt Vivian left me her estate, nearly $200,000, specifically for my education and creative pursuits. I never saw a penny of it. As my legal guardian, my father transferred it all to a family account. By the time I learned what had happened, through a guilty confession from the lawyer's assistant, the money had funded my brother's third attempt at law school and his first failed tech startup. The day after graduation, I found the letter on my bed. My father's precise handwriting. As you have chosen to defy this family's wishes and pursue your selfish interests, you leave us no choice. You have until morning to vacate this house. I remember standing in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by art supplies and dreams, and feeling something harden inside me. Not just anger, resolve. That night, I packed my belongings and my dreams and left without saying goodbye. I worked 3 jobs, lived in a studio apartment with water damage and questionable heating, and put myself through design school one exhausting semester at a time. The irony wasn't lost on me that 8 years later, when I purchased the Victorian on Maple Hill with the proceeds from my first major design contract, my parents suddenly remembered they had a daughter. The Christmas cards started coming. The occasional phone call. Always with the undercurrent of, when will you come to your senses? I never did. Instead, I built a life they couldn't imagine, one filled with creativity, authentic relationships, and a hard-earned sense of self-worth. At Sarah's bookstore, they did what? Sarah nearly dropped the teapot she was holding. We were sitting in the back room of her bookstore, turning pages, surrounded by the comforting smell of old books and fresh coffee. Sarah had been my first friend when I moved back to town, the owner of the small, but beloved local bookshop who had hired me to redesign her space. I showed her the text message from Michael that had arrived after my mother's call. Can't wait for the wedding at your place, sis. Victoria's already talking to interior designers. Don't worry, they'll fix that shabby chic look you've got going. Sarah pushed her glasses up her nose, a habit from our college days. At 45, with gray streaking her dark hair, she had the air of someone who had seen enough of life to be unsurprised by its cruelties but still indignant on behalf of those she loved. They honestly think they can just commandeer your home? For a wedding you weren't even properly invited to? She poured tea into my cup with more force than necessary. And what's this about interior designers? Your house has been featured in Architectural Digest, for God's sake. I sighed, feeling the weight of old patterns pressing down. They've always treated my choices as temporary rebellions. They're probably telling everyone I've finally come to my senses by allowing this wedding. And have you? Come to your senses, I mean? Sarah's eyes were sharp behind her glasses. What do you think? She grinned. I think they have no idea who they're dealing with anymore. I stirred my tea, watching the leaves swirl. The thing is, Sarah, part of me is so tired of fighting them, of being the villain in their story. Then don't fight. Set boundaries. There's a difference. Boundaries, I repeated softly. The concept still felt foreign after years of having mine trampled. I need to look at some old papers. Things I kept from back then. Sarah squeezed my hand. One company for that trip down memory lane? I nodded, grateful. Some ghosts are too heavy to face alone. The attic exploration. The attic stairs creaked under our feet, dust motes dancing in the beam of my flashlight. I hadn't been up here since moving in, deliberately keeping my past contained while I built my present. You sure about this? Sarah called from below. We could just drink wine and plot your defense strategy instead. I need to remember, I called back. Everything they did, everything I survived. I kept records. The beam caught a stack of boxes labeled, "Do not open," in my teenage handwriting. I dragged them to the center of the floor and sat cross-legged among my past. Oh my God, Sarah gasped, reaching the top step. Is that you? She pointed to a photo that had slipped out. Teenage me standing beside my first major art installation, my parents visible in the background, my mother's mouth a tight line of disapproval, my father checking his watch, Michael absorbed in his Game Boy. State competition, senior year, I confirmed. The day that sealed my fate. I opened the first journal, my handwriting smaller than, cramped with emotions I hadn't known how to express. They ripped up my acceptance letter to Rhode Island School of Design. Dad said no daughter of his would waste her life on paintings. Mom said I was breaking her heart. Sarah squeezed my shoulder. Jesus, Eleanor. There's more. I pulled out a manila envelope, hands steady now. This is from the night they kicked me out. Inside was the crumpled letter, my father's handwriting coldly formal. Sarah read it, her expression darkening. And this. I extracted another envelope, this one holding bank statements and legal documents. Proof of what happened to Aunt Vivian's inheritance. Nearly $200,000 transferred to my father's account 2 months before I turned 18. They kept this from you? That's straight up theft. It funded Michael's third attempt at law school and his first failed startup. I spread the papers across the dusty floor. The lawyer's assistant felt guilty and slipped me copies. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria, Michael's fans. Just toured some florists for the wedding. Can't wait to transform your quaint little garden into something actually elegant. Sarah read it over my shoulder and swore. Please tell me you're not going to let them walk all over you again. I looked at the photo of my teenage self, young and proud before the world tried to break me. Then at the successful woman I'd become, against all odds. Something settled in me, not the hot burn of revenge, but the cool certainty of self-respect. No, I said softly. I'm not, but I'm not going to destroy them either. I'm just going to finally enforce my boundaries. How do you plan to do that? They've already printed invitations. I gathered the documents carefully. First, I'm going to call Robert. Judge Craig? Your dad's former golf buddy? The same. the one who was appalled when he learned why I really left home. He's been trying to make it up to me for years for not seeing what was happening. Sarah's eyes widened. You're going legal? I'm going to protect what's mine. I tucked the evidence into my bag. And then I'm going to call the Historical Preservation Society. The ones who've been begging to use your garden for their annual fundraiser? I nodded, a plan taking shape. I think September 15th would be the perfect date, don't you? Flashback, the making of Eleanor. What my parents never understood was that their rejection had forged me, not broken me. Each dismissal of my art had only deepened my commitment to it. Each financial obstacle had taught me resourcefulness. My first apartment after being kicked out was above a laundromat, the constant hum of machines below a reminder of my new reality. I worked as a barista in the mornings, a restaurant hostess in the evenings, and a night desk clerk at a small hotel on weekends. Between shifts, I sketched and planned and dreamed. My breakthrough came during my second year of design school. A local restaurant owner saw my portfolio and hired me to redesign his struggling bistro. The transformation, which honored the building's 1920s heritage while creating a warm, inviting space, caught the attention of a regional magazine. More clients followed. By 30, I had my own design firm specializing in historical renovations. By 35, I was turning down more projects than I accepted. The Victorian on Maple Hill became both my home and my testament, a place where the past was honored but not preserved in amber, where new life could flourish in old bones. I never spoke publicly about my family. What would be the point? But I kept everything, every letter, every bank statement, every cutting remark captured in my journals. Not out of bitterness, but out of a determination never to gaslight myself about what had happened. On rare occasions, I would see my parents around town, at the grocery store, at community events. We would exchange stiff pleasantries, perform the pantomime of family for public consumption. Michael, when he visited them from the city, would sometimes call, always with some thinly veiled request or my mother's transparent matchmaking attempts. Mom thinks you and David should reconnect, he'd say, referring to my ex-fiancé, the corporate attorney my parents had practically selected from a catalog of acceptable husbands. I would deflect, change the subject, maintain the fragile détente. It wasn't peace, but it wasn't war either. Just the cold distance of people who shared blood but not values. That Sunday phone call changed everything. It wasn't just the audacity of assuming my home was theirs to use. It was the realization that they would never stop taking unless I finally, definitively, stopped giving. The meeting with Judge Robert Craig's chambers smelled of leather and lemon polish. At 65, he carried the gravity of his position with ease, though his eyes still twinkled when he saw me. Eleanor, he rose from behind his desk, clasping my hand in both of his. It's been too long. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Robert. He gestured to a chair. Sarah sounded quite concerned on the phone. What's this about your family and a wedding? I placed my folder on his desk. Before we get to that, I need to show you something. I extracted the evidence of my stolen inheritance. I've never pursued this legally, but I think it's time you saw it. Robert studied the documents, his expression growing increasingly grave. When he looked up, the twinkle was gone from his eyes. Your father was my colleague for 20 years. I knew he was rigid, traditional. But this, he tapped the bank transfer statements. This is criminal. The statute of limitations has expired for criminal charges, I said. I checked, but not for civil action, especially with documented fraud. He leaned back. Now, tell me about this wedding situation. I explained my parents' demand, showed him Michael's text and Victoria's messages. Robert's bushy eyebrows drew together as he listened. They've already booked vendors using your address? Without your permission? He shook his head. That's not just presumptuous, Eleanor. That's legally actionable. I don't want to destroy my family, Robert, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. I just want them to respect my boundaries. For once. He studied me for a long moment. What do you want to do? I'm going to host the Historical Preservation Society's annual fundraiser on September 15th. They've been asking to use my garden for years, and it's a cause I believe in. I want to make sure my family can't legally interfere. Robert nodded thoughtfully. A counter move that's constructive rather than destructive. I like it. He pulled out a legal pad. Let's talk about how to protect yourself. And he glanced at the inheritance documents again. Perhaps it's time your family faced some consequences for their actions. The strategy takes shape. The days that followed were a flurry of activity. I signed a contract with the Historical Preservation Society, officially offering my home and gardens for their annual fundraiser on September 15th. The society was thrilled. My property, with its carefully restored Victorian architecture and period-appropriate gardens, was the perfect showcase for their mission. Robert helped me draft formal cease and desist letters to my parents and to all the vendors they had contacted using my address. He also prepared a civil suit regarding the misappropriated inheritance, to be filed only if necessary. Think of it as insurance, he explained. We don't have to use it, but having it ready gives you leverage. Meanwhile, my inbox filled with increasingly desperate messages from my family. My mother's tone oscillated between saccharine pleas and thinly veiled threats. My father's communications were shorter, more demanding, confident that I would eventually capitulate. Michael's texts became more frequent, more aggressive. Victoria's in tears over this, he wrote. Her mother's friends are all expecting to see the house they've heard so much about. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I focused on preparing for the fundraiser. The event would highlight local historical preservation efforts, with tours of my home's architectural restoration, garden displays showcasing heritage plants, and a silent auction to raise funds for saving the town's oldest theater from demolition. You're turning their attempted takeover into something positive, Sarah observed as we reviewed the plans over coffee at her shop. It's elegant. I'm not doing it to spite them, I realized. I'm doing it because it matters to me. Because this is my home, and I get to decide what happens here. She smiled. That, my friend, is the difference between revenge and boundaries. My phone lit up with an unknown number. The text made me pause. Hey, Eleanor. Long time no see. Heard about Michael's wedding from your mom. Would love to catch up. David. Sarah peered at the screen. Your ex? The corporate lawyer they tried to marry you off to? They're really pulling out all the stops, aren't they? They think he's their secret weapon. The one who got away. I laughed softly. They have no idea that he was the final straw, their hand-picked husband who spent more time discussing firms with my father than talking to me. Are you going to respond? I considered it for a moment, then typed. David, I'm not hosting Michael's wedding, despite what my mother may have told you. I wish you well, but I'm not interested in reconnecting. Eleanor. Simple. Direct. Boundary established. When I looked up, Sarah was watching me with a mix of pride and curiosity. What changed, Eleanor? You've been keeping the peace with them for years. I thought about the boxes in my attic, the evidence of years of manipulation and control. About the young woman who had left home with nothing but her determination. About the successful designer I'd become despite them, not because of them. I said slowly, I finally realized that keeping the peace was costing me my power. And I'm done paying that price. Flashback the inheritance. I was 17 when Aunt Vivian died. She had been my mother's college roommate, a woman who had chosen adventure over convention, travel over stability, passion over practicality. In many ways, she was everything my mother had chosen not to be. She's throwing her life away, I overheard my mother tell my father once, after Vivian had sent postcards from her latest photojournalism assignment in Southeast Asia. All that talent, wasted on taking pictures of strangers. But to me, Aunt Vivian represented possibility. When she visited, which wasn't often, she would bring me art supplies from around the world, handmade papers from Japan, pigments from Morocco, brushes from China. The world is so much bigger than this town, Ellie, she would whisper, using the nickname my parents discouraged. Don't let anyone tell you what your life should look like. Her funeral was small, just family and a few friends. My mother was tense the entire time, her grief complicated by what I would later recognize as regret for paths not taken. 2 weeks later, Vivian's lawyer contacted us. She had left me her estate, not vast by some standards, but substantial enough to fund my education and give me a start in life. The specific wording of the bequest had been clear: to Eleanor Reed, to pursue her education and creative endeavors, in the hope that she will live a life true to herself. I was ecstatic, seeing it as the universe's confirmation that my path was right. My parents were silent during the lawyer's explanation. It was only later, over dinner, that my father spoke. This changes nothing, Eleanor. You will still attend law school as planned. But Dad, Aunt Vivian wanted me to. Vivian, my mother interrupted, her voice tight, was a lonely woman who died alone in a foreign country. Is that what you want for yourself? I looked at her, really looked, and saw something I hadn't noticed before: fear. My mother was afraid of unconventional choices, of social judgment, of roads not taken. I want to study design, I said, as gently as I could. I want to create beautiful spaces that honor history while making room for new life, like Aunt Vivian did with her photography. My father's hand came down hard on the table. This discussion is over. The money will be placed in a trust until you come to your senses. It wasn't until after they had kicked me out, when I was struggling to pay for design school one course at a time, that I learned the truth. There was no trust. My father, as my legal guardian, had simply transferred the entire inheritance to a family account from which he funded Michael's education and business ventures. I learned this from Marcia, the paralegal at Vivian's lawyer's office, who had watched the entire process with increasing discomfort. It didn't feel right, she told me over coffee, sliding copies of the bank transfers across the table. She wanted you to have that money for your dreams. I stared at the evidence of my parents' betrayal, feeling surprisingly calm. Thank you for telling me. Aren't you going to do something? Marcia asked, confusion evident in her voice. I carefully folded the papers and tucked them into my bag. Yes, I said. I'm going to succeed anyway. And I had. But I had also kept those papers. A reminder that some wounds don't heal until they're properly acknowledged. The wedding day confrontation, September 15th, dawned clear and beautiful, autumn sunlight gilding the changing leaves on my maple trees. By 9 a.m., my property was already transforming for the Historical Preservation Society's fundraiser. Volunteers set up information booths about local restoration projects. Caterers arranged elegant displays of locally sourced food. Musicians tuned their instruments on the small stage near the koi pond. I stood on my porch, watching it all unfold, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and calm. Sarah arrived with coffee and moral support. Security team is in place, she reported. Robert's clerk is on standby with the civil suit paperwork, ready to file if needed. I nodded, taking a sip of coffee. Do you think they'll actually show up? After all the vendors called to confirm the venue change? After your certified letters? After Robert personally called your father? Sarah shook her head. They'd have to be insane. They're not insane, I said quietly. They're just used to getting their way. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from the security team I'd hired. Convoy of cars approaching main gate. I took a deep breath. Here we go. We walked down to the entrance, where the society had hung an elegant banner. Annual Historical Preservation Fundraiser celebrating our architectural heritage. The first car, a sleek silver Mercedes, pulled up to the gate. My mother emerged, immaculate in a pale blue suit, her pearl necklace catching the light. Her expression shifted from determination to confusion as she took in the scene: the banner, the volunteers, the distinct lack of wedding preparations. Eleanor? She approached, her smile strained. There seems to be some confusion. We're here for Michael's wedding. There's no confusion, Mother. I kept my voice even. As I told you, as my lawyer told you, and as all your vendors were informed, I am not hosting Michael's wedding today. I'm hosting the Historical Preservation Society's annual fundraiser. My father emerged from the car, his face already reddening. This is ridiculous. We have 200 guests on their way. Then I suggest you direct them to your backup venue. I believe Victoria's mother reserved the country club. More cars pulled up behind them. Michael and Victoria stepped out, followed by what looked like an advance team of the wedding party. Victoria's white dress was partially visible in a garment bag being carried by a harried-looking assistant. Michael approached, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. Sis, what the hell? The wedding is supposed to start in 3 hours. Not here, it isn't. I gestured to Sarah, who handed him a folder. These are copies of all the communications informing you that this venue was not available, along with documentation of the vendors who were inappropriately booked in my name. Victoria pushed forward, her carefully made up face contorted with fury. You can't do this. We have contracts. Actually, I corrected her gently. You have fraudulent documents with my forged signature. I never agreed to host your wedding. A catering van pulled up, the driver looking confused as he took in the scene. Mrs. Hall? We're here for the Reed Chambers wedding. Where should we set up? You should contact whoever actually hired you, I replied. Because it wasn't me. My father stepped forward, using his height to loom over me, a tactic that had worked when I was a child but now seemed merely pathetic. Eleanor, you are embarrassing this family. After everything we've done for you. That's exactly what this is about, I interrupted, my voice steady. Everything you've done to me. The inheritance you stole. The dreams you dismissed. The boundaries you ignored. I pulled an envelope from my pocket. Which brings me to this. I handed him the envelope containing a copy of the civil suit Robert had prepared, detailing the fraud around my inheritance and the recent attempts to use my property without permission. What is this? He demanded, scanning the first page. A choice, I said simply. Leave now, respect my property rights going forward, and we can discuss settling this privately. Continue to make a scene, and my lawyer will file this with the court this afternoon. It will, of course, become public record. My mother snatched the papers from him, her eyes widening as she read. You wouldn't dare air family business like this. I don't want to, I said honestly. But I will if you force my hand. Michael looked over her shoulder at the documents, his face paling as he realized what he was seeing. Dad, is this true? About Eleanor's inheritance? My father's expression hardened. That money was used for family priorities. Your education, your business, my inheritance, I finished for him. Left specifically to me for my education and creative pursuits. Nearly $200,000 that could have spared me years of working 3 jobs while putting myself through design school. Something shifted in Michael's expression, confusion, then dawning comprehension. I always thought, you said it was family money. It was Reed family money, my father snapped. Used for the good of the Reed family name. Which apparently didn't include me, I added quietly. Victoria tugged at Michael's arm. We need to call the country club, make sure they're ready. This is a disaster. But Michael stood still, looking at me with new eyes. More guests were arriving now, creating a traffic jam at the entrance. The Historical Society volunteers were directing them to parking areas, explaining the situation as diplomatically as possible. This is your last chance, I told my parents. Leave now. Contact your guests. Use your backup venue. We can discuss the inheritance issue privately through our lawyers. My mother's perfect composure finally cracked. After everything we sacrificed for you, you sacrificed nothing for me, I said, feeling an odd sense of peace. You sacrificed me for your vision of what this family should be. There's a difference. She turned away, tears of rage or perhaps shame filling her eyes. My father put his arm around her shoulders, shooting me a look of pure venom. This isn't over, he threatened. Actually, I said, I think it is. At least the old patterns are. What comes next is up to you. They retreated to their car, my mother already on her phone, presumably activating the backup plan. Victoria followed, practically dragging a shell-shocked Michael behind her. But Michael paused at the car door, looking back at me. I didn't know, he said, his voice barely audible over the distance. About the inheritance. I really didn't know. I believed him. Michael had been raised to accept his golden child status, just as I had been trained to accept my role as the disappointment. We were both victims of our parents' rigid expectations, just in different ways. We should talk, I said. After all this. When you're ready. He nodded once before sliding into the back seat. The Mercedes pulled away, followed by the convoy of wedding party members. The security team efficiently directed the arriving guests to turn around, explaining there had been a venue change. Sarah appeared at my side, slipping her arm through mine. You okay? I watched my family's car disappear down the road, feeling the weight of decades of pain and anger begin to lift. Not gone entirely. Such wounds don't heal in an instant, but lightened. Yes, I said, surprised to find it was true. I think I am. Behind us, the fundraiser was coming to life. The musicians had started playing, a quartet performing classical pieces in the garden. The scent of autumn flowers and gourmet food filled the air. Guests for the actual event, supporters of historical preservation, local officials, design enthusiasts, were beginning to arrive, mingling among the educational displays. Your house has never looked more beautiful, Sarah observed, watching sunlight play through the stained glass accents I'd restored in the front windows. She was right. The Victorian stood proud against the autumn sky, its gingerbread trim and wraparound porch a testament to both history honored and new life embraced. My home. My sanctuary. My statement. Come on, I said, turning away from the empty road where my family had disappeared. We have actual guests to welcome. The fundraiser was a remarkable success. By late afternoon, the society had raised more than double their goal for the theater restoration project. Visitors marveled at the architectural details I'd preserved and the modern touches I'd integrated. Several asked for my business card, impressed by the balance of history and livability. I was speaking with the Historical Society president when my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. At Country Club. Wedding proceeding. We need to talk after all this. About everything. I slipped the phone back into my pocket, neither accepting nor rejecting his tentative olive branch. That decision could wait for another day. The last guest departed as twilight softened the garden. Sarah and I sat on the porch swing, glasses of wine in hand, watching volunteers pack up the last of the displays. How does it feel? She asked. Standing your ground? I considered the question, searching for the perfect word. Necessary, I finally said. Like something I should have done years ago. Better late than never. She clinked her glass against mine. To boundaries. To boundaries, I echoed, feeling the evening breeze against my face. Cleansing. New. The aftermath. The call from Robert came 3 days later. Your father's lawyer reached out, he said without preamble. They want to discuss a settlement. I set down my coffee mug, staring out my studio window at the maple tree in my garden. Its leaves were turning crimson at the edges, the first hint of the full autumn glory to come. What kind of settlement? They're offering full repayment of the inheritance with interest, which comes to just over $300,000. They want a confidentiality agreement in return. I had expected to feel triumph at this news, or perhaps satisfaction. Instead, I felt a strange hollowness, as if winning had somehow cost me something I hadn't known I still valued. What do you think? I asked. I think they're afraid of what happens if this becomes public. Your father's reputation in the community, his position at the church, your mother's standing in her social circles. They're offering financial restitution to protect what they truly value. Their image, I murmured. The very thing they had always prioritized over my happiness. Yes, Robert agreed. But the money is rightfully yours, Eleanor. You can do whatever you want with it. An idea began to form in my mind. Can we meet tomorrow to discuss counteroffer terms? Of course. My office at 10? Perfect. And Robert, thank you for everything. After hanging up, I sat for a long time, watching the maple leaves dance in the breeze. Then I called Sarah. They blinked. I told her. They're offering to repay the inheritance. Victory. She crowed. Are you going to buy yourself something outrageous to celebrate? A trip to Paris? A vintage sports car? Actually, I said slowly, I was thinking about starting a foundation for young artists whose families don't support their dreams. The silence on the other end lasted just a beat too long. Sarah? Sorry, she said, her voice suspiciously thick. Just got something in my eye. A foundation sounds perfect. Absolutely perfect. Flashback the parent story. There are moments when you suddenly see your parents not as the mythic figures of your childhood, but as flawed humans with their own traumas and fears. For me, that moment came during my grandmother's funeral when I was 15. My father's mother had been a stern woman, cold in her affections, but rigid in her expectations. At the reception after her burial, I overheard my father speaking to an old family friend. "She never thought I'd amount to anything," he said, his voice tight with an emotion I couldn't identify. "Law school, partnership, none of it was ever enough. Richard," she'd say, "ambition without character is nothing." The family friend had patted his shoulder awkwardly. "She was proud of you, Richard." In her way. My father's laugh was hollow. Her way was to remind me of every misstep, every failure. To make sure I knew that the Reed name had standards, and I was always in danger of falling short. I had slipped away then, troubled by the glimpse into my father's inner world. It didn't excuse his treatment of me, but it helped explain it. He had been raised to believe that approval was conditional, that love depended on performance. And he was raising us the same way. My mother's story I learned in fragments, mostly from Aunt Vivian. How she had been the talented one, the sister with the artistic eye and steady hand. How she had set aside her dreams of studying art in New York to marry my father, to become the perfect corporate wife and mother. "Your mom was the best painter in our year," Vivian told me once, when I was 12. "Her watercolors made our professor cry. They were so beautiful." Mom painted? The concept seemed impossible. My mother's hands were manicured, perfect, made for arranging flowers and holding cocktail glasses at my father's firm parties. God, yes. Landscapes mostly, but portraits too. She had a gift for capturing light. Vivian's eyes had grown distant. "We were going to get an apartment together in the village after graduation. Then she met your father, and well." She shrugged. "Different paths." I asked my mother about it later, showing her one of my own drawings. "Aunt Vivian says you used to paint." Her expression had closed like a door shutting. "That was a childish phase. I grew up and chose real life." She handed the drawing back to me. "You should focus more on your studies, Eleanor. Art doesn't put food on the table." Years later, after I had established my design business, I found myself at an auction preview. Among the items was a watercolor landscape signed M. Jenkins, my mother's maiden name. The painting showed a young woman standing at the edge of a lake, her face turned away but her posture suggesting both longing and hesitation. The light on the water was exquisite, capturing the precise moment between day and dusk. I bought it anonymously. It hangs now in my studio, a reminder that dreams denied don't die. They transform into regrets that shape everything that follows. Understanding my parents didn't excuse their actions, but it helped me see that their cruelty toward my choices wasn't really about me at all. It was about their own fears and regrets, their own unlived lives. The mediation. The mediation room at Robert's office felt too small for all the tension it contained. My parents sat across the table, their expensive lawyer between them. Michael sat in a chair against the wall, his presence unexpected but somehow right. "Let's review the terms," Robert said, spreading documents across the table. "Full repayment of the inheritance with interest, totaling $312,450. In return, Ms. Reed agrees not to pursue further legal action regarding this matter and agrees to limited confidentiality, namely, not actively publicizing the details, though she reserves the right to discuss it if directly asked." My mother's lawyer leaned forward. "My clients were hoping for full confidentiality." "That's not on the table," I said firmly. "I won't lie if asked directly." My father cleared his throat. "Eleanor, be reasonable. This could damage your reputation." I finished for him. "Yes, it could. Just as your actions damaged my life. Actions have consequences, Dad. Isn't that what you always taught us?" He fell silent, a muscle working in his jaw. Michael spoke up unexpectedly. "The terms are fair. We should accept them." All eyes turned to him. He met my gaze steadily. "I've been thinking a lot since Sunday. About the family we were. About who I want to be going forward." He looked at our parents. "What you did with Eleanor's inheritance was wrong. You know it was wrong. And I benefited from it without even knowing. My mother's perfect makeup couldn't hide her shock. Michael, you don't understand the situation. I think I do, Mom. His voice was quiet but firm. You and Dad decided that my dreams mattered and Eleanor's didn't. You invested in my future at the expense of hers. And you never even told me. My father shifted uncomfortably. We made decisions for the good of this family. For your vision of this family, Michael corrected. Where I was the lawyer's son carrying on the Reed name, and Eleanor was. The disappointment I supplied when he hesitated. The rebel, he said instead, with the ghost of a smile. The one brave enough to choose her own path. The door opened, and a court clerk entered with more paperwork. Judge Wilson is ready to review your settlement unless anyone has changed their mind about proceeding. A tense silence filled the room. Trial would mean discovery, testimony, public records. Everything exposed. We'll settle, my father's lawyer finally said. I watched them sign paper after paper, my mother's hand perfectly steady, my father's slightly trembling. When they reached the final document, my father paused, pen hovering above the signature line. This will follow us, he said quietly. Only as far as the truth needs to, I replied. He signed, the pen scratching against paper like a final confession. The clerk returned with the judge, who reviewed our settlement quickly. Everything appears in order, she said. The financial transfer must be completed within 30 days. If there are no further matters. Actually, I said, there is one more thing. I pulled a folder from my bag and slid it across the table to my parents. This is information about the Eleanor Reed Arts Foundation. It will provide grants to young artists whose families don't support their creative pursuits. My mother opened the folder, scanning the contents with a frown. What is this? The inheritance you're returning will fund it. I wanted you to know how your money, my money, will be used. I looked at them both. To help other young people avoid what I went through. You're using our restitution to fund some kind of rebellion foundation? My father's face darkened with anger. No, Dad. I'm turning something painful into something healing. For myself and for others. I stood, gathering my belongings. You taught me that every action has consequences. Now I'm teaching you that those consequences don't have to be destructive. They can be creative. Outside the mediation room, Michael caught up with me in the hallway. Eleanor, wait. I turned, studying my brother's face. At 38, he looked older than his years, the weight of expectations etched around his eyes. Victoria left, he said abruptly. After the wedding, said she couldn't be part of a family with this kind of scandal hanging over it. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it. That must be painful. He shrugged. Turns out she was more in love with the idea of being a Reed than with me. Kind of a wake-up call, actually. He hesitated. I've been thinking about what you said. About it not being too late to build my own life. It isn't, I assured him. I never wanted to be a lawyer, he confessed. Or run a tech company. I wanted to teach history. Medieval European history, specifically. I smiled, remembering the little boy who had built elaborate castle models in his room. I know. You used to make me play knights and castles for hours. You remember that? Of course I do. You were a pretty good kid before they turned us against each other. He looked away, blinking rapidly. I've applied to the PhD program at Berkeley. For medieval studies. It's a long shot, but you're doing it anyway. I finished for him. Good for you, Michael. I'd like to talk more. Sometime. If you're willing. Maybe see if we can. I don't know. Build something new. I thought about the decades of pain, of rivalry engineered by our parents, of the golden child and the black sheep roles we'd been assigned. And I also thought about the little boy who had shared his ice cream with me when I dropped mine, who had cried when I left home and called me secretly for months afterward. I'd like that, I said softly. Not right away. I need some time. But yes, I'd like to try. He nodded, relief washing over his features. Thank you. As he turned to go, I called after him. Michael, good luck with Berkeley. You'll make a great professor. The smile that lit his face was genuine, perhaps the first real smile I'd seen from him in years. Epilogue of the Foundation. Autumn leaves swirled across the community center parking lot as I made my way inside. 6 months had passed since the mediation, since my parents had repaid the inheritance that was rightfully mine. 6 months of building something new from the ashes of the old. The Eleanor Reed Arts Foundation was officially launching today with its first round of grant recipients. Young artists from across the state had submitted portfolios and essays describing their work and the challenges they faced pursuing creative careers without family support. Sarah met me at the door, clipboard in hand. Everything's ready. The gallery space looks amazing, and the press is already here. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. And our special guest? Arrived 10 minutes ago. Nervous as hell, but here. Inside, the community center's main hall had been transformed into a gallery, displaying works by the 20 finalists. Paintings, sculptures, photographs, digital art, creativity in all its forms. Each piece accompanied by the artist's story of perseverance against familial expectations. As I moved through the space, greeting the young artists and the local arts community members who had come to support them, I felt a sense of completion. The inheritance that had been meant to fund my creative dreams was now doing exactly that, just for more people than Aunt Vivian could have imagined. At the podium, I welcomed everyone and explained the Foundation's mission: to provide financial support, mentorship, and community to emerging artists whose families didn't support their creative pursuits. Art isn't frivolous, I told the audience. It's essential. It's how we process our world, our experiences, our emotions. It's how we connect across differences and find common ground. Every artist in this room is contributing something vital to our shared humanity. I announced the 10 grant recipients, each receiving $15,000 to pursue their creative education or projects. The joy on their faces as they accepted their awards reminded me of myself at 17, standing proudly beside my first major work. And now, I said, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. Someone who understands firsthand the courage it takes to change course and follow your true passion, even when it means disappointing others' expectations. Michael stepped up to the podium, looking both nervous and determined in his tweed jacket with elbow patches, already practicing for his new role as an academic. Thank you, Eleanor, he began, his voice growing stronger as he continued. When my sister asked me to speak today, my first thought was, what do I know about artistic courage? I've spent most of my life following the path laid out for me by others. He paused, looking out at the young artists. But I'm learning that courage comes in many forms. Sometimes it's the bold defiance of expectations, like my sister showed from a young age. Sometimes it's the quieter realization, later in life, that it's never too late to change course. As he spoke about his journey from reluctant law student to aspiring medieval history professor, I found myself studying him with new eyes. The golden child was gone, replaced by a man finding his own way, however belatedly. After the ceremony, as attendees mingled among the artworks, Sarah nudged me. Look who just walked in. My mother stood hesitantly at the entrance, elegant as always but somewhat diminished. Without my father beside her, she seemed smaller, less certain. Did you invite her? Sarah asked, surprise evident in her voice. No, I said truthfully. But I made sure she knew about it. I made my way across the room, watching emotions play across my mother's face: anxiety, determination, and something else I couldn't quite name. Mother, I greeted her, keeping my voice neutral. I'm surprised to see you. The foundation was in the newspaper, she said, her eyes darting around the gallery. Your art foundation. Yes, I confirmed, waiting. She clutched her handbag tighter. I wanted to see it, to understand what you're doing. I gestured to the room. Supporting young artists whose families don't believe in their talents or their dreams. Her gaze finally settled on mine. Like I didn't believe in yours. The simple acknowledgement, not quite an apology, but closer than I'd ever expected, caught me off guard. Yes, I said softly. Like that. She nodded once, then reached into her handbag and withdrew a small, tissue-wrapped package. I brought something. For your foundation. If you want it. I accepted the package, unwrapping it carefully. Inside was a small watercolor, clearly old but beautifully preserved. A young woman painting at an easel by an open window, her face a study in concentration and joy. You? I breathed, recognizing my mother's younger self in the brushstrokes. Vivian painted it. Our junior year of college, she explained, her voice catching. Before I, before I chose differently. The painting was exquisite, capturing not just a moment but a possibility, a path not taken. It should be worth something, she continued. For your foundation. Or you can keep it, if you prefer. I looked from the painting to my mother, seeing in her face echoes of the young woman at the easel, the artist she might have been, the dreams she had abandoned. Thank you, I said simply. It's perfect for the foundation. A reminder that it's never too late to honor your creative self. Something shifted in her expression, pain, recognition, perhaps the faintest hope. I should go. Your father doesn't know I came. I nodded, not pushing for more than she could give. As she turned to leave, I called after her. Mother, the next application cycle opens in January. In case you know any aspiring artists. She paused, her back still to me. I'll remember that, she said quietly, and then she was gone. Sarah appeared at my side, eyeing the small painting in my hands. Was that a very small beginning? I said, gazing at the young woman at the easel, my mother as she might have been. Or maybe just an acknowledgement of an ending. I'm not sure. Later, as the event wound down and the last guest departed, Michael helped me load the remaining program materials into my car. That went well, he observed. Those kids' faces when they got their grants, it reminded me of you, back when you won that state competition. I thought the same thing, I admitted. He leaned against my car, looking up at the community center. Do you think it made a difference? What you did today? I thought about the young artists with their dreams and determination. About my mother and her small, significant gesture. About Michael and his new path forward. I think, I said carefully, that healing happens in unexpected ways. Sometimes through confrontation, sometimes through creation. Today felt like both. He nodded thoughtfully. I saw Mom. Didn't get a chance to speak to her though. She brought a painting. For the foundation. His eyebrows rose in surprise. Really? Small steps, I said with a slight shrug. That's all any of us can take. We stood in companionable silence, watching autumn leaves dance across the parking lot. Not quite family, not quite strangers. Something new being built between the ruins of the old. Eleanor? Michael finally broke the silence. Thank you for showing me it's possible to change course, even after following the wrong path for so long. I thought about the long journey from that terrified 18-year-old, cast out from her family, to the woman I'd become. About the wounds that had shaped me, the struggles that had strengthened me, and the creativity that had saved me. The thing about paths, I told him, is that they're not fixed. We make them by walking, and we can change direction anytime we choose. As I drove home to my Victorian on Maple Hill, I felt the presence of all my selves, the wounded child, the determined student, the successful designer, now the foundation director. Not separate identities, but a continuum. A story still being written. The maple trees lining my driveway were ablaze with autumn color, their leaves a testament to the beauty that comes with change. I parked and sat for a moment, watching the sunset gild my home in gentle light. Then I gathered my things, including my mother's small painting, and walked up the porch steps. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new creations, new possibilities. But for now, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be, in a home of my own making, surrounded by beauty born from both joy and pain. I was finally, completely Eleanor Reed. Artist, designer, creator of my own life's path. And that was more than enough.